If you are looking to add more leads into your business, which let's face it, who isn't? This episode is for you. I'm being joined by Davey Jones, who's the CEO of BDOW, which is the #1 free lead capture tool. Now, whether you want to use a tool like BDOW in your business or not, maybe you just want to stir up some more leads through a lead magnet. This episode shares a ton of insights from Davey Jones, all about how to create a lead magnet that will up your lead gen game. So I am excited for you to check out some tangible and tactical tips with Davey in this episode. Friends, I am so excited to have the amazing Davey Jones back with us today. He's been on the show before, but we are going to be talking about something different this episode because he is the CEO of BDOW, which is formerly Sumo. And he is going to be talking with us all about lead generation, which everybody I talk to, that's like one of their top 3 issues in business, right? So I'm pumped. I want to hear one, Davey, I want you to tell our people who weren't with us on the last episode a little bit about you, but also what is BDOW? And also it is so fun to say that word.
Well, I'm glad you think so. That's for sure. So yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to be back. Thank you so much for having me back. Really enjoy our conversations and to be chatting about lead generation, because like you said, huge, I think everybody needs to be doing lead generation. And I think especially in today's climate, a topic that's top of mind. My background, when I came on this podcast last, I was running 2 agencies, Davey and Krista, with my wife, Krista, brand and website design agency, designing primarily show it websites, and then Till Agency, which was a digital advertising agency. I've stepped away from both Till fully. So Till's still running. Ryan and Jesse, they're awesome. Still running Till Agency. I haven't fully stepped away from Davey and Krista for obvious reasons, probably. It's kind of tied. The brand's kind of tied to my name. I'm also married to my co-founder over there. But from a day-to-day perspective, most of my focus is on BDOW. And BDOW was formerly called Sumo. Some people might know it by SumoMe, which is a popular lead generation tool. So we do forms and pop-ups that are super intelligent, that make it easy to capture leads from your website. I know for a lot of people, they're probably familiar with like AppSumo or King Sumo or the Sumo Group generally. Yes, they were the owner of that product. They sold it to us, just Sumo, not AppSumo and all those other tools, just Sumo. And we've since rebranded it to BDOW. I'll spare you the story for now, but we do have a great post and video that kind of explains how we got to that name.
Well, I'm excited to talk about how not only BDOW for lead generation, but lead generation as a whole. And also, how somebody can utilize a tool like this. Because for me, before you and I talked about it and before I saw you guys rebranding and I got really interested in it, I think I misunderstood a lot behind what is possible with something like this and with lead gen. So can you kind of just start us off by explaining what lead generation is to you, an expert in this field, and why is it so important for creative entrepreneurs to understand?
Yeah, I think lead generation is something that a lot of people think is more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's relatively simple. And I think when we're thinking about it on a one-to-one level, it becomes really simple, because all lead generation is getting people to raise their hand and saying, hey, can I hear a little bit more about that? I think at its basis, that's what lead generation is. And for a lot of people, when they first start a business, especially if you're first starting a service-based business, you go off and you tell your family and friends what you're doing, and it comes up casually in conversation, and they ask to hear a little bit more about it, and you share a little bit more about it. And then they're like, oh, can I book you? Or can I purchase this product? Right. And that feels really easy. I think when we're talking about lead generation at this scale of your website or what you want to do with digital ads, it's best to remember how you had those conversations one-on-one. And all you're trying to do is have those same conversations at scale. Right. So I'd say at its simplest form, all lead generation is getting people to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to hear a little bit more about that. A person becomes a lead when you can follow up with them. All right. So like Instagram followers, I don't know if I really count that as a lead. I think, building your Instagram community, your Facebook community, your TikTok community, I think all of that is important. But at the end of the day, there's not really a direct line of communication with those people. Like when you post, 100% of your followers are not going to see, whatever it is that you post. So typically I would define a lead when you get contact information like email or phone number so that you can follow up via email broadcasts or text message.
Yeah, I love that. And I love simplifying it. I think that that's, I don't know, we all get in our heads so often and overthink and overcomplicate things. We talked about overcomplicating before I hit record. And it's just like so common when you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting at home alone, if you're a solopreneur or, you know, whatever. And I love that concept and just taking it back to the root of how easy it can be. So hearing that, I'm like, let's ride this simple wave. You know, how can people like what are the most effective strategies for lead gen, like especially for creative business owners, and our audience is a lot of educators too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best ways to start generating leads on, let's say, your website is to come up with what's called a lead magnet. And a
Mm-hmm.
lead magnet, all it is you're offering something of value in exchange for that person's contact information. There's a few things that make for a good lead magnet. One, it's something of value and relevant to the problem that you're trying to solve. So, of value, something that's going to solve a specific problem for somebody. So, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, if you are a website designer, I think, just coming from a design agency, a lot of people really struggle with curating images for their website whenever they're going through a website update. So maybe you come up with a guide that helps people curate their images for a website refresh or a website redesign. Something like that would be valuable to people who are struggling with that issue, but would also qualify them as well. Like if somebody sees that guide and says, "Oh, that's for me," as the business, or as a website designer, okay, that person is thinking about or in the process of getting ready to redesign or update their website. And so it makes sense that you would then follow up with them and see what other value that you can offer. So lead magnets, I think, are one of the most effective ways to do that. I think that for people who've tried this in the past with like just a join my newsletter field
Yeah.
on their website, they've probably experienced very little success from that because nobody thinks to themselves like, "Oh, I want another email," you know?
Yeah.
But it's not that they don't want email. They just want email about things that they're interested in, about things that are going to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like one thing a lot of people run into when they're creating a lead magnet, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit with having it answer a specific problem, but I think so often people overthink again. Does it have to be like this massive thing? Like, how specific should it be? Should I have one? Should I have more?
Yeah, those are all great questions. The best lead magnets, in my opinion, I think the best lead magnets are tools that you already use in your business that get you or your clients results that you can templatize. And they're
Mm.
often simple tools. So just as a few examples, I have what I call a content brief. So anytime I create a piece of content, this is for any of my own businesses that I've ever run, I have a content brief. And it's basically a way that I outline content to optimize it, not only for search engines, but organize it in a way that other team members can jump in there and they know exactly what I need for that piece of content, whether it be images or social media or whatever. And I took that content brief and I turned it into a lead magnet. And it took maybe 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a Google Doc template that I use. And all I did was copy that template and then made it available to other people. And people loved that template. And it was one of our most downloaded templates for a time.
Mhm.
So just a simple example of something that you can take from your own business that you already use, that you already know gets you results and make it available for others. Another example, actually, Krista has a mood board template. And so when she's starting to put together the initial mood board, she has this sort of template that she uses. She put that together and put that out as a lead magnet. And again, super, super popular. Why? Because it's an easy to use tool. It gets you a very specific win. And then from the business's perspective, it's like, okay, people who are doing this, they're thinking about brand design or they're thinking about website design. And so they're the kind of people that we want to follow up with and say, "Hey, can we help with this?"
I love that. I mean, I just feel like the concept of take something that you're already using that's already created and just make it accessible, I think is amazing. What are your thoughts on having more than one? I mean, like, and I know BDOW has, I would love to hear more about that tool because I'm actually personally digging into it just for our listeners to know, like, I am really, really excited to dig into this tool for myself. So this is a selfish kind of question, but do you need more than one lead generator? And I mean, do you need more than one lead magnet? And how many is too many, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess a couple FAQs about lead magnet.
Yeah.
One, I think you just need one. I think that's one of the issues that people run into, is that they think they create one, maybe it doesn't do quite as well as they think it would do, and they move on to the next thing. And it's a heavy lift sometimes creating lead magnets. I mean, depending on what you're creating. I think that's why I like, first thinking about, okay, what's really working for my business and my clients, and trying to templatize that and give that away, because that's something that's already proven out. And you can be fairly sure that other people are going to find it useful as well. But something else people can do is they can just test the title. We had a lead magnet that was social media, like social media graphics that could be customized in Canva. All right. So we had a suite of graphics, and we're just giving them away. When we first launched that lead magnet, we called it launch graphics, because the intent behind creating it was giving people graphics they could use when they launched their website. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't doing well. It was a few dollars per lead. We run paid ads all the time. So we had, very hard data on what this was costing us, in terms of lead cost. Yeah. And all we did was change the title and just made it social media share graphics. So now these are social media graphics that you can use regardless of whether you're launching a website. Mm-hmm. And the cost went down below $1 per lead. And so, just by not changing the actual product at all, or not changing the actual lead magnet at all, just by changing the title, we improved, the rated download. Now, somebody could argue that launch graphics would have been maybe more qualifying, because people are thinking about website design, but it's something you do after you launch a website. So like if somebody's downloading those, they probably already did their website design project. But regardless, the point being is you can make small tweaks to the landing page or the title of your lead magnet. And that's what I would do before moving on to another lead magnet. And then when you have a lead magnet that's working, double down on it, expand on that, figure out ways that you can promote that, in, other channels. Mm-hmm. But you really don't need more than one lead magnet, especially if it's working.
I love that advice. Again, I feel like it just speaks so much to the power of simplifying things and not overcomplicating them and overthinking them. Okay, so we talked a little bit about, well, you've kind of mentioned throughout it some of the different things you'd recommend in terms of like tools and technologies. Obviously, I want to hear about BDOW. I'd love to hear the difference between people who are currently using tools like Flowdesk to put their lead magnets up. And so, like you said, having that like newsletter sign up or whatever, and then just emailing it back. Or how does a tool like BDOW one compare or work together in tandem with them? Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, great question. First, we love tools like Flowdesk and ConvertKit and other email service providers. We very much see our place as sort of a connector, helping you with the lead gen side of things. We see our purpose as helping you start conversations or helping you get more people on your list. When people are on your list, using something like Flowdesk or ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign, whatever it is that you choose to email and communicate with them is great. But the thing that we really provide is intelligent forms and pop-ups. So a lot of times with email service providers, you're very limited in what you can do with your form or pop-up. You can do basic things like maybe you can have a pop-up show on a certain scroll depth. So people scroll a certain percentage down your website and a pop-up appears, or after a certain amount of time, right? But beyond that, oftentimes email service providers aren't as concerned with the display rules of the form. And that can be really limiting. So for us, we focus a lot on the display rules. And what that means is that you can target specific visitors with specific messages. So for instance, like you could target people with a message when they visit your website for the first time. So if you only want to target people who visited your website for the first time, you can do that. This is especially helpful for people who are doing e-commerce and want to offer some sort of special deal for somebody who lands on their website the first time, right? So Krista does this on the Davey and Krista website. She has a pop-up appear. It's a 20% off coupon, but it's only for new visitors. Mm-hmm. And so that way we're putting that, just for our new visitors, and that's special for them. Something else that you can do is you can show pop-ups based on where that visitor is coming from. So another example, let's say you're running a Facebook or Instagram ad campaign and you're offering a specific discount, but you are, let's say, running that campaign to a certain audience on Facebook and you only want them to see that offer. So they click on that Facebook or Instagram ad and they come to your website. You can set it so that a pop-up appears only when people are coming from Facebook and Instagram. And that way you're not promoting this offer to anybody else on your website, just those people who are coming from Facebook or Instagram. And the same thing, you could do that with affiliates too. So let's say you're working with some sort of partner and you want to serve a certain message to the visitors from that partner's website, you can set that up. And that really the possibilities are endless here. You can show a pop-up after a certain amount of pages, but you can really get dialed in what message you show to people after, certain actions they take on your website.
Oh my gosh. As you're talking, my brain is like spinning with ideas and things that you could do to make this really stand apart. I'm wondering, I mean, this is just literal, again, selfish question. When you customize and change the messaging, we mentioned affiliates, and I love working with affiliates. I think it's like one of my favorite things I do in my business. If somebody were to click from an affiliate's website to mine, could I customize like the imagery that they see? Could it be a photo of us together?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So you could show a pop-up and it's like, hey, welcome. And it could be you and your affiliate, and then, guiding them to whatever action you want to take. So oftentimes when I'm talking with people, they're very much thinking about building their email list, but pop-ups and forms have there's so many use cases beyond just lead generation. So for instance, maybe you want to direct people to certain information on your website that has to do with you and your affiliate. You could just put a button on that form, and when they hit it, they'll go straight to that page or that piece of content that they should be checking out. So there's really endless possibilities here.
Yeah, I feel like I hope as our listeners are tuning in that they're doing the same thing and thinking like, how can I apply this to my business? Because I'm already like, I should have been writing things down while you were talking.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I have more examples too we can go through if you'd
yeah.
like.
Yeah, like throw some more examples at us. I feel like this is so helpful for people to get an idea of how they can implement.
Yeah, and I think for your audience in particular, because they're a lot of educators,
Yeah.
they're doing things probably like webinars.
Yes.
And so one of my favorite use cases of late is a friend of mine, John. He's a brand photographer. He's selling brand photography courses, and he implemented BDOW on his webinar registration page. And what he created was an exit intent form. And so basically an exit intent form, when somebody starts hovering their mouse to close the browser, over the X on the browser to close out, a form pops up or a pop-up pops up with some sort of message. Typically it's like a last chance offer or a hey before you go, something like that. So what he did is he wanted to capture the people who were deciding not to opt into his webinar. And the way he did it was by offering them some sort of special gift. Like, hey, if you register now, you'll also get XYZ. And he was able to add nearly 200 extra webinar registrations to his webinar just from that form. So these are people who were otherwise going to leave the page and not register. So he was able to get them on their list and get them the webinar registration information. And you just think like if you know what you if you run webinars, you know this, but 200 extra people on a webinar could be thousands, if not tens of thousands of extra dollars in revenue. So that, I mean, one of my favorite case studies of all time. Krista just launched a course. She did the same thing and experienced something similar. She didn't get quite 200 extra people, but did capture a significant amount of people who were otherwise going to leave the site. So that's been one of my favorite to date. Do you have a lot of people doing like e-commerce?
A few. I mean, I have a lot of people actually that have shop products. I know for sure that have things like guides and PDFs and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, you can always use, depending on what they're using. Like, for instance, if they're using WooCommerce, we have a WooCommerce integration. And the way the WooCommerce integration works is that you can generate unique discount codes for people when they opt in. So they opt into your pop-up, they see a unique discount code. You can send that unique discount code to whatever email service provider you're using. So for instance, like let's say it's ConvertKit, you just create a custom field in ConvertKit. It will be shot into that custom field. And then that way, when you follow up with people, you can say, hey, remember you have this discount code. And then you can, insert that discount code in the email that you send them and remind them you have 24 hours or 72 hours to use this code. So that's one of my favorite features of late for e-commerce business owners. Jen Olmstead from Tonic, they've been using it on their site. And so one thing they do is they target their cart page. So when people get to the cart page, they have a pop-up that appears that promotes an additional offer. So it's typically what we call a bump offer, right? So it increases the average, cart value. And so I forget what they're actually promoting. I think it's like Canva social media guides of some sort, right?
Yeah.
But when implementing that, she made an extra $5,000 that week just from that one pop-up. So there's just all sorts of potential with pop-ups and forms.
Dang, that's incredible. Like just that added bonus, That sounds so cool. I love this option for people. I'm so excited for everybody to get to kind of like see all these, because I feel like these are things that we may think about. Like, wouldn't that be cool in theory if we could easily do this? But most of us are not crazy tech savvy people that feel like we could make this happen. It sounds like something that would be a lot harder than it probably is with a tool like BDOW. So that's amazing. I love hearing these options. I'd love to hear maybe a couple of like the big mistakes you see people making as they're trying to up their game when it comes to lead gen.
Yeah, another great question. I'd say something we already talked about was simplifying. And so the
Yeah.
big mistake there is overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to have, campaigns where you have a dozen pop-ups triggering based on what the other pop-ups do, right?
Yeah.
I think if you come up with a single compelling message, in a form, whether it be a form or pop-up, and no matter where it is on your website, that's going to be more effective than whatever complicated string of pop-ups that you create.
Yeah.
So that would be one mistake. If you feel like things are getting complicated, they probably are, and that's probably hurting you. All right. So hear that and let that be permission to keep things simple, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, we talked about the join my newsletter issue. Nobody
Mhm.
wants another email. So you have to give them a reason to want to get on your email list.
Yeah.
Typically, the best way to do that is a lead magnet. I think one of the big mistakes that I see people make when they're promoting a lead magnet is they promote the features of the lead magnet over the benefit of the lead magnet. And so
Oh.
they don't focus on the particular benefit or the problem that they're going to solve. They don't focus on like kind of the end solution and what that means for the business owner. They focus on like the fact that it's a 50-page ebook, or something like that, or it's,
Yeah.
1,000 hours of content, right? And, you had asked about this earlier, like how long should a lead magnet be or how big should it be? And again, it doesn't matter how long it is. Does it solve a specific problem? I think the ones that solve specific problems and give people quick wins are the most powerful. I mean, I think about even the courses. Some of the most expensive courses I've taken are some of the most to the point,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
there's a lot of value in that, right? It just
Yeah.
gets you what you need to know and gets you implementing it and gets you that win. People should approach lead magnets the same way. But oftentimes, a simple trick is to, in coming up with, let's say, like a benefit oriented title, is to play the so that game.
Mm.
So basically, how that works is you have whatever you have, and maybe it's a ebook of 50 recipes, like 50 healthy gluten free
Yeah.
recipes, right? Now that's fine. All right. Some people might see that and say, okay, 50 gluten-free recipes, that's great. But that title can be improved just by playing the so that game. So
Mm.
50 gluten-free recipes so that you never have to guess what to make for dinner for your allergy, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of examples that'd be relevant to us because like half my family here is gluten and dairy free, right?
Right.
And the pain point I have, right, is like, oh, I want to make this for dinner. How do I make it gluten and dairy free? Right.
Yeah.
So if you can get to that, so that, right, that's really, I think, what is going to resonate with people. Same thing with like, bullet points. You want to highlight the benefits. Like, how is this going to improve somebody's life? How is this going to solve this problem? How is this going to lead to better health, wealth, or reputation? Focus on those things. I don't think people care as much about the specifics as we think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about like the length not mattering. I think anybody who has been a listener for a while has heard me talk to death about how I believe that courses, the videos should be succinct and to the point, and like, let's cut the fluff. Let's just give the people what they need, because nobody, if there's one shortage of what we have, it's time. So
Mm-hmm.
let's get to the point. I love that. And I love that you gave such a tangible way. I want to make sure that we put this in the show notes, like that formula of the so that, I think, is just a really great exercise. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And when you play that game, I mean, play it until it feels ridiculous, and you'll be surprised at how far you can take it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to have to do this with all of my things. I love it. I love that you also mentioned testing out. You kind of said this a while back, and I made a mental note to come back to it, because when it comes to finding out if a lead generator or a lead magnet is working or not working, tracking things like you said, you run ads to your thing, so you have that hard data. How can people track the metrics of if something is working or not? Is it something that a tool like BDOW, does it do A/B testing for people? Like, what's the best way to track if something is working? And do you find that people don't do this? Like, I think a lot of people don't do it. So I don't know if you see that too.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those things that it feels overwhelming. I think one of the great things about BDOW is it makes it super simple. So there's an easy dashboard where you can see the number of times that form or pop-up was shown, all right, the impressions, and then the number of times that that form or pop-up was completed. And so you get a very easy to understand conversion rate right there in your dashboard. Regardless of what tool you're using, most form pop-up email tools out there will provide some sort of data around conversion. Understanding what those numbers mean is maybe a little bit more difficult, and it's going to vary from, lead magnet to lead magnet and course to course. And there's going to be variables like whether something's expensive or not as expensive. Even if it's free, how much time do you have to commit? So for instance, like if you just have some sort of freebie download and somebody's landing on that landing page, we would expect 1 in every 2 people to download that. So 50%, right? That would be good. For a webinar though, the number is probably closer to 30%.
Yeah.
It's still free, but the difference is that people might have to spend 60, 90, 120 minutes of their time watching the webinar. So you'd expect it to be a little bit lower. Then when you talk about e-commerce, right? E-commerce rates, I'd say typically somewhere between 1% and 4%, right? So understanding the data a little bit different, but on the lead gen side of things, I would say we want to get as close to 50% as possible, with 30% being sort of our floor, where if things fall below 30, we want to make some sort of improvement to that page. Now, pop-ups are a little bit different because you may be showing pop-ups to people and taking a little bit more of a risk. So for instance, like you might have a pop-up appear on your blog, and it might not be specifically related to the blog, but still something that would qualify visitors and the right kind of person, it would be perfect for them, right? So with a pop-up, you might see conversion rates less than 10%, but that could be good just depending on what you're trying to do. Now, one of the things that you can always be doing is A/B testing. And I love how BDOW makes this easy because you click a button and it's create variation. All right. So you click the create variation button, you create your variation of that form, and then you set how often you want the variation to be shown. So, you might, for a lot of tests, you'll want to show it 50-50. 50% of people see variation A, 50% see variation B. But sometimes maybe you're taking a risk, and you're like, I know this one works, but I kind of want to play around with this one. So you might want to make it 80-20 or 30-70 or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a very simple way to test and see if you can increase conversion rate based on messaging or imagery or or offer generally. And small percentages in conversion rates can make a huge difference down the line. So it's something that we're almost always doing. I think the, A/B testing can get complicated too, but if it's getting complicated, it means what? You need to simplify it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes when you're A/B testing, you just want to test one variable. So when you create your variation, don't create a whole new form. Just change the title and see what that does. And over time, you can continue making improvements. And again, if you're improving, by a percentage point, that's really good.
That's so helpful. I feel like, again, I feel like the theme of this episode is like, keep it simple, but there's a lot more that you didn't know you could be doing.
Yeah, that's right.
So good.
It is a weird paradox here. Weird
Yeah.
tension.
Yeah, but it's also exciting. I feel like there's a lot of excitement around trying something new, but also feeling the comfort that it doesn't have to be insane. Like if I can do it, everybody else can too. So I'm excited to dive in. Okay, so I would love to wrap up the episode. I feel like you've shared a few of these already, but do you have an unpopular opinion around lead generation as creative entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unpopular opinion. I would just ask you, how many people do you know that are selling things?
No.
None. There's just, like when I think about it, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
No,
I'm not saying it's
nobody.
not possible to sell things at scale without an email list.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's so much more difficult,
No, it's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, so I don't think that's really an unpopular opinion. I think if you want to sell things at scale, you need to be building an email list. I think, I have some unpopular opinions when it comes to service-based businesses and email list and lead gen.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially when people are getting started, they feel like, oh yeah, things are good right now, and they're just always going to be good. And then when things are not good, it's like, oh, scramble, right? Well, if you want to prevent that scramble in your life, start building an email list. It's like your best asset to fall back on. I think that it's a little bit hyperbole to call it a digital ATM machine, but there's a reason why people call email lists a digital ATM machine.
Yeah.
My last piece of encouragement would be really just to keep it simple. You have a page, find a page that you want to do something on, you want some sort of conversion to happen, whether it's selling a course, selling a product, booking a client, right? Mm-hmm. And figure out ways that you can improve that page. Yeah. So that more people convert on it. And I think if you start there, then the process of improving that page is a lot simpler than starting with like the tools and saying, oh, I need this tool, and all of a sudden you're like, I want to use everything that this tool offers. And it's like, no, you don't have to, you can use these tools for very specific use cases.
I love that. It's so helpful. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. And I'm going to link all of the things about BDOW and how people can experiment with it. I'm personally very excited, and my people listening know, like, I don't just say that. I really am very excited to implement some of this. And so for my listeners out there, y'all are going to see some pop-ups on my site soon. So make sure that you take note, and then you'll know all the secrets behind it.
Awesome. And you know what? We'll give you a discount code so that people who sign up using your discount code will get 50% off their first year of BDOW. So we don't have that discount code created, but we'll make sure it's created before this episode goes live. So check out the show notes. I can send it to you. Maybe you can throw it in the show notes.
Yeah, that is so generous. Thank you so much. And y'all go take advantage of it, because I'm pumped. I can't wait to see what comes of this. We'll have to do like a second episode recapping what I see changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're a Showit user, Showit being a sister company of ours, we have a lot of big plans with Showit. So if you're a Showit user, definitely check it out.
Amazing. Which my people know I'm all about Showit. I love it. All right. Thanks, Davey.
Yeah, thank you.